What's up, gang? It's your boy Wolfpack Chris back for the third installment of Body Recomp. Last video we talked about caloric deficit. Now we're going to talk about caloric surplus. And the reason we're talking about caloric surplus, aside from caloric deficit, is because when we talked about the deficit, we were talking about fat loss, losing weight. If that was your primary goal, then that was your video. There's no need to go any further into this. So if you don't care to learn about building muscle, which really isn't going to take long for us to talk about, it's not going to be as long as the 20-minute video we just talked about earlier. And there will be more videos on this in the future. Trust me, everything is based on a basic knowledge, basic information. Just basic information right now. Then if this isn't for you, or you don't care about being muscular and toned and all that, then, well, actually, forget about tone. That's a whole nother video in and of itself. If you don't care about building and putting on more muscle, then you can hit the stop button and check out some of my other videos. But if you are here because you want to recomp your body and you want to build muscle, then that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So without further ado, let's get into it. As opposite of fat loss, we talked about caloric deficit, sending your body into a caloric deficit. Now you want to send your body into a caloric surplus. How do you send your body into a caloric surplus? If you haven't watched the caloric deficit video and fat loss, and this is what you're into, please go back and watch that video because it'll explain a lot about macronutrients, calories, and all that good jazz, and how to do the count with the calculator and all that. And again, this is just the basics. I'll do another video showing how we would do that. But if your thing is building muscle, you want to send your body into a caloric surplus. So I'm going to use the same example in this portion of the training as I did in the last portion of the training. We talked about our 200-pound guy who is required 2,000 calories to maintain that 200 pounds day in and day out. So for 365 days out the year, if our 200-pound subject wants to remain 200 pounds and not gain or lose anything, whether it's gaining muscle or fat, or losing muscle, because your body can atrophy and you can lose muscle too. Bodybuilders hate that. But then all you would have to do is just eat 2,000 calories a day and make sure that you're getting approximately 2,000 calories a day. But if you're a guy that's 200 pounds and let's say you want to put on maybe 8 to 10 pounds of muscle, let's give it a reasonable 4 to 6 months. Maybe a little bit more than that, who knows, depending on what you're doing, beyond what I'm about to tell you guys what to do. Then you have to send your body into a caloric surplus. Now, going on the upside of this, going into the surplus, you're not just building muscle. What's happening is you're building muscle, but you're also gaining fat. And a lot of times what happens is when people go into a muscle building phase, when they're putting on muscle, it's just a subsequent of it. You're going to put on fat right alongside the muscle. Once you reach the size that you feel like is good for you, you step on the scales, and let's say you're about 20, 30 pounds heavier, maybe 40 pounds heavier. You notice a different change in your build. You can go do the bipod, where they displace, you do a air displacement where they can determine your body fat. And you can tell how much muscle you gain based off that. So you know how much fat you need to strip off. Or you can do the hydrostatic dunk test, where they can also do that by water displacement, by putting your body in the water. Either way, you can figure out what your body fat is, how much lean muscle you gained. Those of you know I hate that word. And that'll tell you how much fat you need to lose in order to show off that new muscle without going into atrophy and losing muscle, all that hard work you put in. But at any rate, what you have to do to achieve that is to go into a caloric surplus. That means you have to eat more than that 2,000 calories that you were supposed to eat. Now, a lot of people say that the general rule is to eat 5,000 calories above your maintenance. So if your maintenance is 2,000, like our 200-pound subject, that's going to put you around about 2,500 calories per day. That can vary. You can figure this out also by doing a calculator, using a calculator on if it fits my macros, or bodybuilding.com. Bodybuilding.com has an excellent macro counter. And we talked about macros on the last video. We talked about proteins, carbs, and fats. For every 1 gram of carbs and proteins, that's worth 4 calories. For every 1 gram of fat, that's worth 9 calories. And you can pretty much base your meal plan, your nutrition plan around that. We talk about calorie surplus. A lot of people think that, oh, this is the fun side of fitness. This is the fun side of body recomp, putting on muscle. Because when you go into a deficit, when you're trying to lose fat, you're sending your body into all these changes. You yourself are going into a lifestyle change. You're cutting out a lot of bad habits. Here, a lot of people think, oh, I get to go into a surplus. I can take in more calories, so I can eat more junk. I can eat more bullshit. And that couldn't be any further from the truth. When you're going into a surplus, you're putting on more calories, but that doesn't mean you put on more junk. Because the more junk you eat, if you're not watching your numbers, that body fat that you're putting on with the muscle can go up a lot higher than what you intended. And when you're trying to come down to cut all that fat, that could be the difference in cutting fat within 1.5 to 2 months to having to try to cut fat in about 3 to 4 months. You guys follow me? So it's really all about the quality of food that you're eating when you're going into a surplus. So what I always recommend, and I think anybody reasonably would recommend when you're eating more calories, is to eat a lot more lean foods. Beef, steak. There's nothing wrong with increasing the amount of beef that you're putting into your diet. I wouldn't overdo it. Maybe 2 to 3 times a week. One meal out of 2 to 3 times a week. So it can be lunch or dinner. Never lunch and dinner 2 to 3 times a week. Just 2 to 3 times a week. But make sure you're eating lean beef. 93%, 97% if you can stand it. But just it's got a lot of amino acids in it, which helps with protein synthesis. And we'll talk about that over here in a second with protein to feed the muscle. A lot of chicken, fish, turkey. I stay away from the pork. I'm not Muslim, and I'm not knocking anybody that is. Pork is, I grew up on pork all my life as a kid, into my adulthood, but it's one of them things that's no the devil. So I try to stay away from that as much as I can, and I love bacon. I cheat and treat myself every now and again, but for the intents and purposes of what you're doing, stay away from the pork, stay away from lamb, stay away from anything that's greasy, super fatty, stay away from fried foods. That includes fried fish. I love fried catfish, but stay away from it. Baked fish, fine. Baked salmon, fine. But those are the type of things you want to eat to send your body into a surplus. You also can eat carbs. That's the cool part about going into a surplus, because in order to build muscle, you have to lift a lot of weights. You have to lift heavy. In order to lift heavy, you have to have energy. Carbs is what's going to give you energy. Subsequently, because you have to eat more carbs to support that energy for you in your training cycle, you're going to go into a carb surplus too. So your carbs are used as fuel for your body. That's what we talked about, energy. So the best place that your body loves to burn calories from is from your carbohydrates that you take in. That's going to always be the first place that your body goes to burn fuel. For the type of training that you would have to do to build the type of muscle that you want to build, you're going to have to eat more than what your body needs to burn, which means that all the carbs that you've taken in that didn't get burnt in the process of training is now going to get processed into glucose, which is then going to get processed later on into fat, and it's going to become stored fat. And this is how, in the calorie surplus, you end up gaining fat while building muscle at the same time. And that's why I tell you guys, if you're trying to build muscle and you're going into a caloric surplus, it doesn't mean you can eat any and everything. That just means you can eat more. So eat lean and clean. That way, when you get ready to go into the cutting side of the muscle building, I notice I didn't say gains, muscle building, when you cut in the fat from the muscle that you built, that means it'll mean the world of difference from having to take 4 to 6 months to cut that fat to having to take 2, maybe 3 months to having to cut that fat. And that's why you always want to be careful. So what carb sources should you eat? What I recommend you to eat? Potatoes, starches. Nothing wrong with potatoes. Corn, nothing wrong with that. Sweet potatoes, that's a big one. Whole grains, that's a big one. Quinoa, that's another good one. Just good complex carbs. And again, that's another video for another time, or you can Google it, YouTube it. There's plenty of information out there for you if you want to learn that. So let's talk about what I consider personally to be the big three for muscle building. First off, protein. Protein. What about protein helps build muscle? So when you eat protein, chicken, fish, beef, even some of your not so lean proteins, it has amino acids in it. Beef being the most enriched with amino acids. And that's why I say it's okay to eat it 3 times a week. However, again, let me reiterate, not to eat it for 2 meals 3 times a week, which would actually take you to 6 times a week. 3 meals a week with beef is my limit. But again, beef is the most rich protein that's most rich in amino acids, and that helps in muscle building, recovery, and repair. So what's happening here is when you go to the gym and you lift weights, you ever notice, especially when you haven't been to the gym in a while, when you go to the gym and you lift weights, and let's say you really lifting, you're really doing a good ass job picking up the weights, putting it down, right? And then the next day, it might not even happen the next day. It might happen 2 days later. Let's say you're doing arm curls. You notice your bicep is sore. It's hurting. That's because when you went to go lift that weight, you tore the muscle fibers in that muscle group. And now what's happening is it's trying to repair itself. The way that it repairs itself is through amino acids. Now, depending on what you're eating, will determine how much amino acids your protein is synthesizing to feed that muscle in order for it to repair itself. When the muscle repairs itself, it grows back, and it grows back bigger than it was prior to when you started lifting. But in order to lift heavy, to get that muscle tear, you have to eat your carbs for energy, because you're going to burn out and you're not going to get as good a workout. And it leads me to my third point, which is resistance training, which we just talked about. Break down the muscle for muscle repair, being proteins to feed the muscle. And there are some other things that you can use to help enhance muscle growth. And I'm not talking about steroids or anything illegal. They sell amino acids and BCAAs, branched chain amino acids, which are your branched chains that are isolated from the amino acid groups that focus only and primarily on synthesizing to feed and help repair the muscle faster. That's aids in recovery. When you hear people talk about recovery, muscle recovery, that means that soreness that you had instantly, well, I won't say instantly, but it goes away faster than what it normally would if you didn't have it. And you're getting more aminos synthesized into that muscle group than you would by just eating your protein source. And again, that's in a whole nother topic, supplementation. We'll do a training on that later. So for all you guys looking to recomp your body and build muscle, just remember calorie surplus, lean proteins. If you're on the beef, 93%, 97%. Carbs for energy, complex carbs, good clean carbs, no pastries, cakes, cookies, pies, none of that shit. And make sure you're getting a good, vigorous resistance training so you can make sure you're breaking down that muscle. Cardio. Cardio is the devil when it comes to building muscle. Why? Because although you're burning fat, which would be perfect, ideal for muscle building, to build muscle and burn fat at the same time, so you get straight lean muscle. What happens is you actually sacrifice muscle building, and you may go into a catabolic state depending on how much calories you're burning. So like we talked about here with your carbs, right? Your body uses carbs as a fuel source for energy. What happens if you burn all of that fuel source off? Now you're going in and you're burning the fat, which is good. But what happens when you burn all that fat off? Now your body has to go to another source to burn for fuel. And what were the big three? Carbs, fats, and proteins. Protein and the muscle is the last place that your body's going to go to burn energy, use fuel to burn for energy for your body. And so that's why you want to limit your cardio. If you're the type of person that does cardio 5 times a week, or you do 45 minutes to an hour, you might want to limit that down to 2, maybe 3 at the most times a week, and only get you about 20, maybe 30 minutes of cardio. And that's low intensity cardio at that. So this concludes the basics of the body recomp series. I think maybe the next video we do like this will be probably about training technique and style and all that. But yeah, hope this has been informative. If you want me to help you with a meal plan, training plan, you can inbox me. I'm not charging to do any of these things right now. But yeah, hit me up.